APAC South. We're back in for Playday number 3, of course. I'm Manic, and I'm joined by not one, but two of the SI casters, Guz and Xenox. How are we doing this evening? I know Guz is a little bit under the weather, but I think he'll battle on through here, Xenox.
Look, I'm very much excited. Yes, thank you very much for pointing out our titles there as well. Six Invitational was so much fun, Rob. Hopefully next time you can join us. Look, very excited for Playday 3 for APAC South. It's been already a very fascinating season thus far. Of course, Q confirm at the top. No one really expected that to play out over the first 2 weeks. So I'm excited to see how we continue on. As well, look at that, the standings. Wow, I feel like I'm doing your job, Rob.
Jeez, here we go. I'm not going to have a job by the end of the season. I can already feel it. Guz, just give me your thoughts on this one as we kind of go over the top. I think Xenox has already mentioned the Q confirm leading the charge here. Is that going to stick? That's the question.
Well, that's a question, I guess, that might get answered tonight, as we do see Q confirm and the Knights take each other on first and second, respectively. So that's bound to be a really exciting matchup. And then I guess going further down to the rest of the table, quite a tight mid-pack. And then unfortunately for Oceania, the Chiefs and Order, rounding out the bottom 2 spots, unfortunately, but still a long way to go. This, of course, is Playday 3 of 7, so we're going to see these standings shape up quite a bit.
I have no doubt, maybe even after today's matches. Speaking of, let's have a look at the schedule and dive into maybe what we can come to expect. That first matchup, Wildcard 7th Heaven, that is sure to be, look, to be honest, I think Southeast Asian domination. I think that might be fair to say here, Xenox, but I think it's to be fair, the game after, that's the one I'm kind of highlighting, I'll be honest.
What did you say, Southeast Asian domination? I mean, that's some nice little tongue twister you got going on there, Rob. We'll give you a thumbs up for that one. Look, I'm excited for Wildcard versus 7th Heaven. Should be a really good matchup. 7th Heaven feels like it should be a must-win for them to continue to prove their credentials as a team that should be vying for top 4. And for Wildcard, it's all about, you know, the whole rebuilding process and where they can go with Molosca moving forward. Knights Q confirm. I mean, that's arguably match of the day, right? It's 1 versus 2. Doesn't get much better than that. Elevate Order also an interesting prospect because you're never sure what order is going to show up, right? If it's a really good order, I think they can take it up to Elevate, but this should be an Elevate win.
Guz?
Yeah, well, I'll take the 4th matchup. That's the only one. Chiefs Invictus should be another spicy matchup. The Chiefs, of course, looking for their first win in APAC South in stage number 2. Invictus off to an okay start, but still looking to, I guess, rebuild again with another pretty significant roster change. So, as always, APAC South, all 4 matches going to be exciting.
Well, we'll come back to you guys because we're going to have a look at the predictions. And what I'd like to hear from you is your thoughts on the entire graphic bar one little bar, and leave that for Xenox, please.
Wow, I'm the only person that picked Wildcard. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I would have thought that someone else might take the punt there. It is a little bit of an underdog pick there, but hopefully that can help boost my score a little bit. Outside of that, yeah, and the other match that is a little bit more contentious, again, is that Chiefs Invictus matchup. But yeah, it's all looking pretty spicy, I guess, across the board. Hopefully, I'm just praying, fingers crossed, that Raven can get some more wins on the board. Because unfortunately, you know, 1 and 7, not ideal.
Hang on a second, he was almost 007 last week. I mean, there's no real zero on additional 0 there, Xenox, and I'm sure you're going to throw. There's something that you're concocting behind the scene that's going to throw me under the bus for that comment. But is there any hope for Order at all? I mean, I think we've kind of brazed over the Q confirm game a little bit here.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to throw you under the bus here, but I might throw Raven under the bus in a way. Now, fortunately for him this week, he's followed all of my predictions. So I am expecting him to jump up to 5 and 7. And myself then, of course, up to 10 and 2. I've been pretty spot on here. Look, the Chiefs matchup versus Invictus Gaming is a really fascinating one. And I am very glad that me and Guz will get to cast it later on tonight. Because if Chiefs lose this, I mean, is that finals done? Really? Is that top 4 done? There's only like 4 play days to go. They'll be 0 and 3. And obviously, when we look at last stage, we would have expected Chiefs to be able to win, but Invictus is starting to find some form here, and they're pushing some teams, and they're getting better. And so I'm a little worried for the Chiefs. Are they in a bit of a dry spell? Are they in a rough patch? And we'll see if they can't get out of it in this particular game. They're going to find it difficult. Looking ahead, you know, they've still got to play Knights. They've still got to play 7th Wildcard Order. So it's going to be a bit difficult. If they lose this, I don't know if they make top 4.
No, and you know, when we do look at a season as a whole, generally, you know, the halfway point, Playday 3, Playday 4, that is the pivot point. You know, you don't really have a choice to lose any games after that, and Chiefs really, backs are up against the wall, but we can kind of look forward to that in the future. Maybe not so much your casting, but definitely the game itself should be entertaining. However, we can bring our attention to the first matchup of the day, Wildcard. And 7th Heaven will be playing off here. Guz, we've already heard Xenox's thoughts on this matchup. You know, he took it for about half an hour and ran away with it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, the way I see this matchup is it's a little bit of a cheeky mid-table scrap. I don't think either of these teams are going to be a massive threat for the absolute pointy end in this league. 7thHeaven still have a lot to prove, and Wildcard, I guess, going through that rebuild phase still. But there is, I guess, some good indications that we can gauge from both of these teams. When we do eventually get a result, we're trying to answer the question of whether or not Wildcard are genuinely improving, and trying to answer the question as well, are 7thHeaven actually a genuine threat to maybe try and break into that top 4?
Yeah, we'll keep our kind of eyes more so to APAC South when I ask this question to Xenox. But at the end of the day, are both of these teams on, you know, an upward trajectory, I want to say? You know, like both of them have taken down Order 7-3. Wildcard, I feel like that was the performance for them that's kind of shown us what they're capable of. But was that Order not playing up to par, or was that Wildcard showing us a glimpse?
Look, I think Wildcard, as we have them on the screen here, probably yes to your question. I think they are trending upwards. Obviously, they were at rock bottom in stage 1, so there was only one way, but that was up. For 7thHeaven, I think they're just kind of teetering around that same position they were from stage 1, around that sort of 4th place position. Not quite middle of the pack, but not quite, you know, competing for top 2 or anything. But for this wildcard roster, I think we're starting to see glimpses of, you know, them being able to see a future, I guess, with this team and this roster with Molosca. They're still got a lot of work to do. You know, only going back a couple of days ago, they did lose out 7-4 to Order, but they beat Order in APAC. So that shows that they're going to be inconsistent. And I would almost put them on the same level as Order, which is probably a good thing compared to where they were at stage 1. They're just inconsistent right now. They've got to continue to find their footing. And look, I think that when you look at these 5 players, they're more than capable of beating 7thHeaven if they're all up and about. It's just a question of that, is that going to be the case? And I'm not sure if it will be.
Feels like that's a very common trend for the Oceanic teams in APAC South. You know, are they up to par? Are they ready to really get going in the matchup? Because truth be told, you know, it kind of is anyone's stage and really anyone's season when you look at the year as a whole. But Guz, your second best friend there, Milo, do you think that that's been a good addition? Do you think that that's
wait? Who's my
well?
best friend?
Me?
Who's my best? Oh,
What? That's not a question. What
I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about that one. I thought
KFC.
Xenox, my fellow SI caster, would be my best friend, but no. Milo actually has been integrating pretty nicely into this roster. Second rated for the team so far, and it's been looking quite good for them. But again, it is a transition period. We don't know how long that's going to be. I hope that for their sake, it's quite quick, and by at least the end of this stage, we get to see this team really in full motion, because we haven't quite seen that as of yet. But yeah, as I mentioned, we just don't know how long that is.
And do you have that feeling, Xenox? You know, I kind of asked you with that Order matchup, the 7-3 victory that Wildcard have taken away. Obviously, Order bounced back the day after, for those of you that don't watch OCN, but of course watch APAC South. That was a rematch on Friday night where Order came out swinging. So how do you read that? What do you read into with Wildcard at the moment? Is there anything to read into? Is this a game-by-game basis?
I think we don't probably have enough information to go off right now, because we're still so early on into stage 2. You almost need to see the full picture before you can make that assumption, considering this is meant to be sort of labeled as a rebuilding phase, and that's sort of what we've labeled it as from the very beginning of stage 2 and even at the back end of stage 1. You know, they came out, they lost to Invictus, an Invictus team that is obviously showing better signs here in stage 2. Then they beat Order, and suddenly you're like, okay, where are they at? And then of course they go over into OCN, they lose to Bliss, they barely scrape by Rhythm, a team that hasn't even won a game yet in OCN, and then they end up losing to Order. So they're having a really rough OCN, -5 round differential, bottom 2, whereas they're at a 0 round differential, bottom 3 here in APAC South. And I think that's probably about where they're going to finish. I don't think they're going to get much higher than that, and that's not a detriment to them. I think that just sort of highlights the other teams in this conference, in this APAC South region, that is very, very strong. And, you know, if everyone knew Invictus Gaming was going to bounce back as well, so that adds to the depth of teams. Q Confirm's having a good season, 9th, 7thHeaven up there. Then you've got the champs, then you've got Elevate, of course, as well. That's 5 teams. How do you then say you're going to be able to fit in Wildcard when you still got even Chiefs below them, a top 4 team from last stage? So when you sort of put it all into that perspective, it makes it difficult for Wildcard. But as I said, it's all about rebuilding, finding their feet, and if they can get a win here against the 7thHeaven team that's obviously still playing pretty well, that would be amazing for their confidence as a team. And not just that, but the standings as well.
Yeah, I mean, you literally just mentioned them. Speak of the devil, and they shall appear. 7th Heaven, you spoke about finding your feet as wildcard this season, really trying to work through whatever it is that, really has been confronting them with the most troubles. This is a roster that really found their feet in Stage 1, Guz, and continues to do so by the looks of it. We have promising signs for Stage 2 as well.
Yeah, week after week, 7th Heaven seemed to rock up to the server and surpass our expectations. And even when we, I guess, heightened that bar, they keep stepping up after week. Unfortunately, last week, they didn't quite have what it took to take down Q Confirm. It was a 5-7 loss to 7th Heaven, and that would have been a massive win, even if they had have scraped a couple of points in overtime just to get that over the line. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. So 7th Heaven looking to bounce back from that result. I think taking on Wildcard does offer a really good opportunity for them to do so. And I mean, you look at this roster, and there's just so many players that on occasion can step up. We have ED, the interview master, and also strong in the server. You have Spirited, for example, arguably the best clutcher in the entire region, or he always finds himself in that clutch situation. And outside of that, it is a pretty well-rounded effort. Now, Cyan, is that a step in for this week, or am I going crazy?
So. No, I believe so.
Yeah, so you've got to step in, sub in rather, for this week for 7th Heaven. So I guess that is a spanner in the works as well.
Xenox, would you say that this might be an open door for Wildcard?
Not necessarily, and to sort of, what's the opposite of throwing someone under the bus? Maybe just giving praise. Raven's actually brought out a quick little stat here in our little caster chat, and it's Ray, of course, who's been subbed out for Cyan. Whether it's a sub for performance or not, Ray has gone 0.61, 8 and 17, 0 and 4 on entry. I mean, really just in the red in basically all stats. Quite literally, the only one stat he's not red. It's an orange, so that's not good. Unfortunately for Ray. So I don't know if it's a performance-based switch or if it is in fact, an illness or something along those lines. So we can't obviously comment on it too much. But it does give an opportunity for Cyan to come in. He is a sub, a registered sub for 7th Heaven, and because of the fact it's not like it's a top player from 7th Heaven, being subbed out due to something else, I don't think that really should do too much in terms of Wildcard's chances. If anything, it might hinder them.
I mean, that's a bold statement. Let's see whether it actually does so or not, but we're going to find out the map first. Let's have a look. The vetoes slowly come on in for us, Xenox, and we've got a clubhouse here. Now, I'm going to throw to Guz first, because Xenox, you love to talk, so I'll give Guz the floor and try to sweep things up a little bit, try to get in and around it. What are we feeling like? Is there any chance for Wildcard?
Well, Clubhouse is a map that both of these teams have played a little bit as of recent. In APAC South, Wildcard took on Order and actually beat them recently. And prior to that, they lost to the Chiefs in OCN. 7th Heaven, on the other hand, they have a much better win record on Clubhouse, 9-1, which is really good for them. They haven't played it very much recently. However, I think based on what I have here, they took on Velocity 9 in the Taiwan National League. 7-3 victory, of course, can't read too much into that result. You have to go a lot further back to see them take it on at an APAC level. So we don't know exactly what 7th will bring to the table here in this matchup, but I think the win record speaks for itself. And 7th Heaven, despite having the sub, should probably be a decent shot on this map.
Xenox, is it in the red or the orange?
Well, it's in the green for 7th Heaven, this map, compared to Wildcard, at least off, recency, I guess, which is, always a little bit difficult, because obviously for Wildcard, a lot of their maps haven't been really in the green, because of Stage 1. I don't think Wildcard will be too displeased with Clubhouse either. The more structured and methodical approach, maybe if they can go back to their old ways and pick up that old form, maybe reignite something within this roster. For 7th Heaven, though, and as Guz pointed out, this has been a very strong map for them in their local region. I think the last time they brought it out was a 1-7 loss, though, in the playoffs, so that was not ideal against Cyclops. But look, this doesn't really change my mind necessarily. If anything, maybe further bolsters things for 7th Heaven versus Wildcard.
Now, very quickly, just back to you, Xenox, before we start to conclude our little segment here. Guz is feeling like this is a mid-table clash. Do we think 7th Heaven has any more of a claim toward the end?
I mean, I think 7th Heaven are a little bit more upper mid-table and Wildcard are maybe lower mid-table, if that's one way you sort of want to look at it, because it's not a very big table, right? It's only 8 teams, so you're kind of looking at mid-table almost being a playoff position.
Very true.
So I think, I think for 7th Heaven, you're probably in a position where I think 4th and maybe 3rd is sort of where they'll be aiming for, and for Wildcard, obviously they'll be aiming for playoffs, but they end up being.
Yeah,
Just Nostradamus.
Very, very true. I mean, the fact is, you know, we're just not seeing the best performances out of Chiefs in order, and where else do you get your points on the ladder? We were talking about this last week. It's a little bit concerning. But guys, quickly, give me your final thoughts on this. 7thHeaven or Wildcard? Who you got?
Well, I was the only one that predicted Wildcard, so I've got to back them in based on that prediction. I do think deep down, my brain is telling me 7thHeaven should get this over the line relatively easy, but my heart is backing Wildcard, and I want to prove you all wrong. So Wildcard for the win.
Xenox, quick one.
Yeah, obviously 7thHeaven. I'm going to say 7-5.
7-5. You're going for a long one instead of a quick one. Well, let's find out how long and deep this is going to run. Let's give it over to, of course, your wonderful casting duo of, oh my goodness, I nearly forgot them, Dev and Raven. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Oh, Manic. Sorry, I nearly forgot then. I'm really excited to be casting this one, Raven. It has been quite some time since we have been on the desk together, and of course it is our home crowd in Wildcard who will be taking on 7thHeaven, who have been looking very, very strong so far.
Yeah, look, 7thHeaven have been looking fantastic, and to that end, they quite easily could be at the top of the table. They did lose to Confirm last week, but it was a 7-5, quite a close matchup. And 7thHeaven been looking in pretty good form, so I think this is a chance for them to take another step forward in the standings.
That's certainly it, and 7thHeaven, of course, will have their sights set on that Mexico major playoffs position. Could be enough for them to get through, or perhaps if they do have a shot at that first place, however unlikely, that would be the ideal ticket all the way to the major. Wildcard looking to redeem themselves, rebuilding that roster with Milo, of course, Rousty on board, but let's jump into the ban phase. Hibana, my bae when it comes to Clubhouse. I am gutted to see her gone.
Yeah, but such a strong ban on Clubhouse, right? Like, I feel like one of these attack bans almost always has to be a hard breacher in one way or another. Traditionally, you know, Maverick or Hibana, just given their ability to be able to open those hatches in particular, you know, it really weighs Church to be strong in your favor. And now we've had both banned off the table here, Dev. So not just one of those hard breaches, it actually is the Hibana and the Maverick combo.
Honestly, if I was to pick two hard breaches out of any, all four of them, to bring every single round on Clubhouse, it would be these two. Like, these are the ones you want. You know, Maverick doesn't have to worry about wall denial. He can get, you know, big, large holes open on, you know, the CCTV wall. Hibana can get the hatches really easily without worrying about impact tricking. And with both of them gone, you're going to be relying on three things: Ace, Thermite, and Thatcher.
That's it. That means that it's going to be, I would say, tough days as an attack team, right? It just requires just that extra degree of coordination because there is not going to be much of a backup. If you fail in coordinating, especially the combo of the Selmas and those EMP, that's it. You're kind of done. Maybe you might have to bring some secondary hard breach gadgets if you're really going to hard lean into it, but it will just create that extra challenge in being able to open hatches or walls, which is just also important in so many Clubhouse attacks.
It just really means that these, and I know we say this word a lot, mini-games. These mini-games are going to be really important, especially when it comes to these top floor objectives. For example, we're going to gym bedroom first. Your primary, I guess, step one objective is to breach the jacuzzi wall, right? You're probably going to want to do that with your Thermite. Nice big hole. But it's probably going to take Thermite, Thatcher, and Zafir all together to breach that wall if there is a Bandit Juggler on the other side. Now, fortunately for 7thHeaven, the only wall denial comes in the face of that mute from Pat, which does make things a little bit more clear-cut from the attacking side.
It is exactly right. So I guess to try and put some perspective, or what I would expect to see out of this half there, is I really think that this is a great opportunity for Wildcard to have a solid start on defense and jump out to a solid lead. I would expect that they might be able to pull this to be a 4-2 half. And it could be a really great early gauge for us in this matchup if they struggle to do so, how Wildcard is really tracking tonight at least. And that kind of brings me to the point that always worries me about Wildcard is in this rebuild phase. It's so hard to gauge where they're at. Last week in particular, it was highlighted on the desk. We saw a solid performance in APAC South, and then a really dismal one in Oceanic Nationals. So it's just so hard to figure out where exactly they're at on the night.
Yeah, I think the stage has definitely been set for Wildcard. We really don't know what to expect. We know they have a high skill ceiling, but it's just been so long since they've been at that level, whereas 7thHeaven have been tracking consistently from being the lowest rated team going into APAC North in a year ago now, is June last year it was. 7thHeaven have made massive strides. They had a pretty deep run in the APAC playoffs. That's not just APAC South, that's APAC as a whole. And they're proven to be one of the most dangerous teams in APAC South and of course, the whole APAC region. Yet to really prove themselves, though, every step forward that 7thHeaven takes is a new height that they have reached.
So, let's attack in this first minute. Having some slow progress in through Garage to try and take in towards CC. Now this Mute Jammer, again, proving it difficult for the attack to be able to open up walls. They've ended up just opening up the construction wall anyway to try and cut that CC rotate, but Milo playing deep and aggressive. The EMP is going to allow that to open up, and he is a sitting duck right now, and he manages to get one on the way out. That was so ballsy from Milo.
Yeah, well, it does net him a kill, and critically, that is one of the hard breaches down as well. Spirited has used both of his exothermic charges. Is there a Jacuzzi breach? That's all I want to know right now. If that Jacuzzi wall's open, okay, not so bad here for 7thHeaven. They might not have any hard breach left, but they've probably breached everything they would want to.
Yeah, they have set themselves up pretty well here. That being said, it has taken the best part of 2 minutes to do so, and they lost a player in the process. But to that point, you know, at least they've got those walls open. They've given themselves the opportunity and options with this attack now. They can push through construction, maybe try and get a pinch in through lobby. They'll always be able to put pressure in through Jacuzzi. It's a good setup for them. It's just being able to tighten up and close it out now. With the man advantage, they are in a great spot to take this first attack.
Good drone work as well. Cyan, the substitute for 7thHeaven, playing this Windows position, hoping for an opening, but it actually goes the other way. Pat makes an aggressive peek at Jacuzzi. That is the diffuser down cold on the ground.
Great little peek there from Pat too, just not overexposing himself to Jim. It has given Wildcard a little in with this defense, Dev. And it means that 7thHeaven now even just have to be more careful. But they've only got 20 seconds. It's really starting to dwindle away from them. They have to seize an opportunity to try and close this one out.
Here comes the last second rotate. That's another critical kill from Pat. Vinny also, now it's just the sub left. Caught in a crossfire, Wildcard knows there's no need to peek. But Vinny gets a bit hungry for it anyway. Wildcard come back from a 3 versus 4 and take the first round quite cleanly.
Yeah, it did end up being pretty clean. Got to praise Wildcard at the end, just really not being a bit overzealous. I think the only thing you could call was maybe Pat, with a bit of a risky peek, but at the end of the day, he did so in a safe manner, got the kills, and it put Wildcard in such a great position to close that out. So that's a good sign early here from Wildcard, because they were in a position to lose that round at about the halfway point, and they did bring that back. So this is looking a little bit dangerous so far, Dev, but hey, 1 round in.
It's defense as well, right? So I wouldn't be going right and home yet and throwing your channel points away just yet. What I will say is, let's talk about Pat for a minute, because he was the impact player that round for Wildcard, and he's had a bit of a rotation in terms of what his role is on the team. Now, when he was brought in, he was valued as quite a vocal member of the squad, but at the time, obviously, Wildcard had Diesel, and Diesel was like the walking, talking support monster who, IGL'd this team so well. And of course, losing him has led to Wildcard having a bit of a change. Now, Miloska has, of course, been contributing a lot to the calling, but Pat's playing a much more supportive role, and I guess a much more leadership role than he did in the past. But I think that something about playing in that support position and anchoring a lot that is underrated is the ability to be a bit aggressive sometimes. Wildcard, in a 3 versus 4, if they just let 7thHeaven step up and execute, I think that Wildcard would have lost that, but no, Pat had some good, well-timed aggression, and it brought that round back.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's always a solid trait in site players, is they seem to be... They get this knack about the timing of their aggression, because if Pat had done that too early, maybe it would have really not worked out and put his team in a really awkward position, but sometimes you do just find the knack, and it works out. And yeah, it was a really good play from him to secure that first round. Now, 7thHeaven progressing quickly in from this bedroom side. They've got a breach in through Jacuzzi, means they're going to have quick access to bedroom, be able to take in through construction, put the early pressure that side. Did notice that Miloska is on the roam, just hanging around outside kitchen, and Emorin and Geo also just looming in the storage stairs. This could be danger early for 7thHeaven if they're not careful with their drones and getting the intel.
Speaking of intel, have a look at this yokai from Pat. really like that aggressive bit of information going to try and enable Milo this early pick, or perhaps just denying these drones. I know that Rousty, Wildcard's coach, actually doesn't like SSG-style roams on Clubhouse. He mentioned it to me once, and he said that he was originally discouraging the team from trying to do that, but it looks like they've actually changed tack and at least done a fake roam here that has bought them, what, 5 drones and half the round before retreating back to site.
Yeah, I'd really call that quite a successful roam because it has, like you said, used a lot of that intel gathering that is now dead information, on top of the fact that it's taken a lot of time. They are starting to get some really good progress though. Spirited looms at the bottom of main stairs, and they're really working efficiently here to be able to get this church wall open. So while it has been a great roam from Wildcard, I'd say this has been a really good adaptation in terms of pace from 7th Heaven right now, just ensuring that they get themselves back into a position that could be really positive for them to close this round.
That said, I'm pretty sure there is a critical error right now. Well, not only has Imorin been able to go all the way upstairs for a flank, Milo's found the opening kill, but 7th Heaven did not find the breach that they wanted on the church wall, and now things have fallen apart. Vinny's found an aggressive position now, perhaps a bit unneeded, but surely no one will expect this. Pika. Oh! Souffle loses his head. There is the trade coming through. Finally, we see 7th Heaven start to make this execute happen. That said, it's not going to work when Wildcard are waiting. 1v2 now for Cyan, the sub here for 7th Heaven, but Pat's lying in right around the corner. Does finish him off.
Beautifully done again from Wildcard. Solid defense and some really good communication and teamwork got to be happening at the moment. The crossfire in particular held from blue towards that church breach really stopped 7th Heaven being able to take that back to be a 2v2 and potentially flip the round on its head. So this is a good start, continuing for Wildcard right now. That being said, 7th Heaven, they're showing up, they're doing things okay. It's just, I think it's going to be the nature of the way this clubhouse is going to play out with these the operator bans and such. It's going to be tough on these attacks, and the fact that Wildcard are locking these rounds is a great sign.
Definitely building that momentum and that confidence that I think Wildcard need. The point they're at the moment of rebuilding this roster is that they're trying to prove to themselves just as much as they're trying to prove to everybody else that they can perform as well as they did in the past, and maybe not necessarily be as dominant. Of course, that comes later in the process. It's not like they expect straight away to be the Wildcard that we saw in 2020. But they are, no doubt, looking to get some proof on the table. So, yeah, okay, we can actually take down top teams. We can actually really have outstanding performances and play like we used to. And I think that building that confidence with 2 strong opening rounds is definitely the way to go.
100%. And on the flip side, you know, 7th Heaven are having to play with a substitute, being Cyan, and it's really hard to say exactly how that is affecting their roster. You know, it can affect communication and synergy, all kinds of things. That being said, I've just been quickly doing some research into Cyan. Now, it's not like he is new to the scene or even new to this level. Way back in 2018, he actually played Southeast Asian Pro League, and he was in a team that placed 5th, so, you know, not terribly back in the day. So he's been around since 2018, so a seasoned veteran.
What team was that, by the way?
I don't know how to pronounce it, whether it is DAD or just Dad1. But
oh, yeah, Dad1. Yes! Yep. Dad1. Good old days.
So, yeah, look, he at least does bring some experience, but it will just always come down to synergy when you're playing with a sub. Some things just don't quite line up, and they're going for a rush!
And in they go, but they do fall, at least 2 of them, but my god! They just bite so much off of Wildcard. Swinging back in now is Milo. Vinny on the clash. Able to get a lot of information. Souffle's low HP, the player in Garage. This plant is going down. There's no utility that Wildcard could use to deny it, so they're going to have to play for a retake. With Ed falling back to a safe repel, it will be incredibly difficult.
Will definitely be a difficult rotate, or retake. But at least Vincia and both Molosca are on full HP. Now, Vinny, we're only with the shield. It means there's a lot of pressure on Milo, and now he's got all 3 to find. He cannot do it. ED will close it out. 7th Heaven bite back with a great little rush to secure the round.
I just love those rush strats, honestly. I absolutely love them. I'm watching it back right now, and Vinny was just at the top the stairs on the Clash, just watching all these players flood into sight. Absolutely nothing that he could do about it. For me, the really standout, I guess, impact there for 7thHeaven was the fact that the player from Wildcard who was playing Rafters was the first to fall, or one of the first to fall. If the Garage player for Wildcard had stayed alive through that, I definitely think that it's possible to do enough damage to make the rush fail, but no, I think 7thHeaven played that really well. They only rushed 3 players through the breach. They actually kept a player in Garage or at the Garage door, and I just think that that was a really well-planned rush, you know? I think most people think rush is just no-brain, send it, but you have to make sure that you've got players covering everything, because of course the downside of a rush is that you're likely to leave one flank exposed or one area unaddressed.
I think that's a great point about actually how well coordinated that was. To hard focus on the Rafters player in Garage. It's good to see that 7thHeaven identified how critical that is, because if you kill that player, like you said, that player waiting at the Garage door can just take the Rafters position. Instantly, your plant is going to be so much easier to cover. It is such a strong part of taking or dismantling a defense. So look, it's really good to see from 7thHeaven, really good confidence, and on top of that, it was a bit of against the grain, you know, Wildcard with 2 rounds in a row, building a bit of momentum. To be able to just pull that rush out, execute it to get a round back is a really strong statement.
Good use of the EMPs here, gonna disable the Electric Claw for long enough. Ooh, actually, is that a juggle? I swear I heard. Yep, there you go. So Vinny actually pulled the claw off, put it back down. What that means is that it's not an entry hole, it's only a line of sight. Add to that the damage of Milo taking down Pika early on an... Oh my god, was that the prone angle as well? That is pretty filthy.
Yeah, definitely not going to be expecting Milo to hang around in kitchen hallway, but that is what happens, and Pika has been caught sleeping in that regard, so this is a good little start all around for Wildcard. 7thHeaven just looking a little bit stalled here to get this wall open, but finally they are taking action. There is a bandit juggle happening, you're right, and oh my lord, that is so beautifully executed from Emarin.
I mean, even though he doesn't completely deny the wall, he finds a pick as well. Emo is absolutely laughing right now. There is no hard breach remaining for 7thHeaven. They're 2 players down and haven't cleared Rafters either. Things are looking pretty grim.
Yeah, and that's going to be the tough part, right? Is they have used all that hard breach, and while CC wall is open, there's nothing to really help them take Garage, so it's going to come down to these awkward little pinches from the door or from lounge, and this is where it's going to get super critical. And 7thHeaven, Spirited has found the down onto Vinny, so this could be an opening to get them back into it.
Garage control is everything. It doesn't matter how hard you stack util in there. If the player loses the fight, then that's it. Spirited is actually going to cross into a plant position, not affected by the gas as well. There's so much time now for 7th to bait this out or stick it, and the plant denial once again fails. How is 7thHeaven back in this? They have info on the flank, traded out 2 versus 2 now with 40 seconds, but Emo's not done yet. It's on to him and Geo to clutch this round and retake that diffuser while Ed is covering, but he is doing such a good job. Geo versus Ed now, but Geo lands the headshot with the SMG-11 and can handle that diffuser. No worries, mate. That is Wildcard just barely winning a round that they should have won easily.
Yeah, really just caught sleeping on the plant denial, or maybe just some error in execution. I did hear a C4 go off, didn't see where it landed. It didn't look like it was that close to the plant. But look, great retake from Wildcard. Unfortunately from ED, when it was in the 1v1, I don't think his little head needed to pop up, Dev, but it did. And Geo called him on it, and it hit a beautiful shot with the SMG-11 to get it. And look, Wildcard, they're steaming towards a really dominating defense half right now.
That said, these rounds are getting closer and closer, right? Wildcard found the first 2, I would say, very convincingly. That third round, 7thHeaven had a nice rush. Of course, you can't replicate that, but I think that does go to show that 7thHeaven is starting to, I guess, tug a little harder in this game of tug of war. And even though Wildcard had that significant 5v3 advantage, 7thHeaven still made that. I think that, honestly, that actually favored 7thHeaven. Like, once they got the plant down in the 3 versus 4, I believe it was at the time, I would say that that's favoring 7thHeaven. So credit to them that they've managed to get it so close. Of course, it's not close enough. Like you say, we are spiraling towards a wildcard-sided defense. So 7thHeaven have opted to take their tactical timeout just now.
Yeah, good time to take it. I think the more attack rounds that 7thHeaven can book in this half, the better they're going to be off for it, because it is going to be a struggle in attack. And if they can manage to bring this back to a 3-3, they are seriously in a solid position to be able to take the match, because, look, we've highlighted that Wildcard have gone through some really difficult times this year with their roster and how that affects synergy, coordination, all that kind of stuff. And where is that going to get exposed the most? It is totally going to be on the attack half, on top of the fact that attack on Clubhouse is generally not an easy feat as it is. So if there are some cracks, they will start to be exposed as we get into the second half. And as long as 7thHeaven can really stay in touch, they will continue to be dangerous to be able to bring this back.
Yeah, it's definitely not, I would say, heavily favoring Wildcard so far. And yes, I am a bit concerned with their attack, like you mentioned. That said, I think that Wildcard have shown on their defense how good they are at coordinating and playing those util games. That I would have a reasonable amount of confidence that when it comes to the attacking side, that they would be all right. And honestly, I think that they could probably do the Thatcher Thermite minigames, but only time will tell. As for now, 7thHeaven have actually opted to only play a single hard breacher with Ed, this time jumping on the Ying instead. Now that is something that could certainly throw a spanner in the works for Wildcard.
Certainly could. Looks like we're getting this little kind of roam, but just going to pull back. Not really hard committing to it again. As you said, doesn't sound like it's really going to be in their current playstyle, but nevertheless, they move forward. 7thHeaven just being very careful here, full droning up to the top floor, and they're going to know that they've got this map control, and I think this is actually going to lead towards them being a bit quicker and more efficient than we saw on the previous Church Arsenal attack.
But of course, what will they be able to do with it? Honestly, I do have a decent amount of confidence here for 7thHeaven. One of the things that did make that last round on attacking this basement objective a little bit closer was the fact that 7thHeaven struggled. Oh, actually, this might happen again. But the EMP juggle comes through. The double EMP will make sure that hatch gets open. Pat has to retreat. Fortunately for him, there's no one playing main stairs, so he does get out safely. Nice cover fire there from Milo. And now Pat's going to use his claw instead on that main kitchen hatch. Now, this shouldn't be too difficult to dispatch with for 7thHeaven.
Yeah, I think that was a really worthwhile attempt to try and juggle that bar hatch, because if they were able to take away an exothermic charge, that is a serious dent in how this attack can shape up. Unfortunately, not working out in this instance. Just around a minute to go. 7thHeaven haven't been able to make a mark on Wildcard. Likewise, on the other hand, but I feel like this is going to be a pretty hectic kind of execute, Dev, because ED on that Ying, I mean, Ying just creates chaos. It's going to have to be something like that if 7thHeaven don't start to find this opening.
But this is setting up so well for an execute here, and in comes the first Candela, but he loses his head. ED falls. Yimmerin doesn't expect the second player, however, and suddenly 7thHeaven start to flood through. They have moto control, they have blue, and that means that the pressure is really starting to mount onto Church. Milo pushing from behind. The tall box starts to try and take a more advantageous position, but there's just about no time left. Souffle almost loses his life there to the gas as the plant starts to go down at the vending machine, but it's faked out. Vinny gets read like a book. The C4 just barely does not do enough damage. And now Wildcard will have to once again deny this plant. Pika is in a perfect position, but Wildcard barely get it across the line.
What a real tug of war to close out the round, but Wildcard, they're the ones that pulled the rope in their favor. Really well covered of that plant. It looks like they denied it. I think it was about 2 times. But that being said, 7thHeaven tried to use it as a bit of a bait to get deeper into Church. Constantly repelled by Wildcards. Great job from them. They're really tracking solid again in this defense. But that being said, I remember saying at the start of the match, it looked like it would be a 4-2 kind of half based on like the operator bans. And at the moment, Wildcard are on par with that. And in fact, if they can get this out to 5-1, Dev, they are seriously in a great position to be able to get the match. And It's going to be a tough position for 7th Heaven. That being said, I actually think 7th Heaven are one of the better teams in APAC South to really not be too daunted by deficits. They seem to have such a positive mindset and always able to pull themselves out of some really tricky situations.
100%. I think for me, the telling thing is the fact that there is just such a significant difference between a 4-2 half and a 5-1 half. That is really where the kicker comes in, right? Because if Wildcard managed to get 5 rounds here, they'll only have to successfully defend one bomb site twice, or 2 different bomb sites once, right? Like, the difference is if they were in like at 4-2, then maybe let's say that their Church Arsenal attack is really good, but they like really struggle on other ones. They really only have to focus on just the one. And I think that that's really the telling thing for this. So if Wildcard can extend this, I'm going to be pretty concerned here for 7th Heaven. One thing I will credit Wildcard is here on this defense side, they're pretty happy to just move around whatever bomb site they fancy instead of going for like a rigid first you go A, then you go, you know, the second one, then the third one. They went Gym first up, and now for their final round of the half as well. You know, they were happy to just spend the rest of the time on Church and Cash. Meanwhile,
Very much so, and again, these mute jammers proving such a pain for 7th Heaven to have to deal with, having to constantly use these EMPs, just waste some time. That being said, they're getting more efficient as we go on. This is their last round to prove that they are in this attack. Milo is still very keen to be aggressive in and around this setup. But right now, looks like 7th Heaven aren't biting as early as they did last time, at least in this bedroom attack. But they are ever looming.
Milo's so keen to pick this. Once again, he finds the opening pick. That is the 4th time that Milo has found the opening pick. Every other time it has been a wildcard player anyway, so 7th Heaven are really struggling with these opening engagements. That Pokeball almost does enough damage to finish off what was left of ED. And Milo's just been on fire this game.
Yeah, actually, he is going off. Milo is having a banger of a match right now, and it's very dangerous for 7th Heaven. Now, you did mention it, Dev. Milo's got 4 opening kills. On top of the fact 7th Heaven have 0 opening kills as a team. They are seriously struggling with these openings. They have been able to trade this one back, but that is a stat in concrete now, is that they have failed to get a single opening kill on any of these attacks. And that is never easy to deal with. On top of the fact, Souffle, a very prominent fragger at plus 10 KD, he's one of the best entry players in APAC South, and he hasn't been able to have that impact.
Yeah, and you know what? The player from 7th Heaven who died there was a Thatcher, which means that since 7th Heaven haven't actually breached Jacuzzi yet, they're going to have to get Souffle to risk this angle and try and shoot off the mute jammer. And that's why Pat is going to keep peeking it. But that said, a bit more work done on the other side of the map by Milo. As usual, he locks down Cash. While he is very low on HP, he has once again brought back that man count. Ooh, here comes ED up the main stairs. This could be a big play. That said, Milo is once again hogging all of the kills. ED's waiting for this peak, but there's a perfect crossfire held. 7th Heaven looking to struggle as Wildcard gets so close to making that across the line. That's a nice shot there. Imarin, though, is desperately trying to hide as Souffle's the last one left. Pat is down. Souffle doesn't know it, and Wildcard come out of the gates swinging with a 5-1 half.
Really big half from Wildcard, and that's going to give them a whole lot of confidence to come into this attack. And I think it is such a dangerous position for 7th Heaven now. Is sure, while the defense is probably favored in this match right now, the fact that Wildcard have been able to bank 5 of those rounds does give them that confidence, and that could be just a little bit of a boost and help them coordinate even better in their attack. You know, just that little edge of confidence can go a mile. So I am really worried for 7th Heaven in this match at the moment. But I don't know, there's something about Clubhouse and comebacks, especially with these defense halves, Dev. It's never easy to be able to write off a team for being able to bring that comeback together.
And this is definitely the moment in the match where we're going to start to see the effects of what you mentioned before, which is the fact that Wildcard as a team that's struggling to kind of reconstruct themselves with the roster change, how will they perform on the attack? Will they be ridiculously slow? Will that communication and the inefficiencies of not being as familiar with each other, will they really start to suffer from that? And will we see 7th Heaven start to scrape their way back into this from that opening if Wildcard is to give it to them.
10 seconds left.
Time to dig deep if you are 7th Heaven right now on the ropes. And
5 seconds to go.
I think to bring it out to big picture here, Dev, it would be seriously disappointing for 7th Heaven to lose this match. I mean, not just for obvious reasons, but they started the season so strongly. I mean, they had a great opening win against Order, and then they had a really solid matchup against Q-Confirm, and to lose against what has been a struggling Wildcard certainly wouldn't be anything that they've planned and also not happy with. But that being said, on the flip side, is this the start of some Wildcard consistency? Because they showed up against Order on Clubhouse last week, and now they're having a stellar performance against 7th Heaven on it. This could be the start of something special for them.
I would love to say yes for Wildcard, except for the fact that they got slapped by Order in OCN at 24 hours after beating them. That is just such a big red flag for me with Wildcard. The fact that they play the same team 2 days in a row and just can't even find consistent results against them. That said, of course, APAC South League is a very different ball game here. You're playing against these Asian teams, and of course that does prove to have some playstyle differences. Ooh, Vinny, that must have been a bit of a read there in a pre-fire. Doesn't, of course, find anything. The 7th Heaven start to peel back this roam, not looking to take too many engagements, but that's a lovely C4. Where was that? Pre-placed on the ceiling from Lounge, and it takes down Milo.
Yeah, look, good pick, because not only is it the fragging informed player for Wildcard, but also Ace being some of their pretty important hard breach. So that is going to be a massive helping hand for 7th Heaven moving forward in the round. And also, Wildcard, it means they're going to have to get their skates on, because that is less hard breach being able to be opened, which is what helps you progress this attack like significantly. So a lot of pressure on Pat, and a lot of pressure in general on the Wildcard attack.
Wildcard need to make sure that they don't suffer too much that loss of Milo. Ooh, this hatch being on reinforced in stock does make things a little bit simpler for them. Geo could simply sledge that open instead of worrying too much about the fact that they're short on hard breach. But now come the big decisions for Wildcard. Where are they going to use these thermite charges, these exothermics? Don't think, no, Spirited did not manage to juggle that in time, so that breach will go off. Now there's one more exothermic for Pat. Is he going to use it on the church wall? Is he going to use it on the kitchen hatch? He has to make this decision. It looks like they're going to go for a church execute.
Looks like they are as well, but look, 35 seconds. It's going to be pretty tough to make, and there is a soft fall here that could be of hindrance. ED, he's not going to go in for the peak, but he is just sitting pretty around the fridge here, and with 20 seconds, this is going to be a bit of a tough push for Wildcard, Dev.
In they flood, ED bites off a little bit more than he can chew. Pat almost finds the second one, but 7th Heaven come to life. And Pat is just absolutely screwed in that short hallway. Cyan finds the final 2 picks, the substitute, having a big impact there, and 7th Heaven show that they are not out for the count.
Now, it looked really solid, and it definitely came off the back of a big C4 to take Moloska out early. Again, not just being a solid fragger so far in this matchup, but losing that ace within that first minute is really not ideal, especially trying to attack Church Arsenal. So, moving on, I mean, Wildcard, they have a lot of rounds buffer. It's 3 rounds that, that's actually a massive deficit, but it can be chewed away on this defense. CCTV cash is where 7th Heaven are going to be going next. And look, they're keeping it pretty standard, bringing a lot of extra wall denial. Surprised to not see maybe a mute, just given the fact that those EMPs are already going to be spread very thin, and that mute was a hindrance when 7th Heaven were attacking. Could have been strong, but regardless, bringing both Bandit and Kaid is going to help a lot.
I feel like Bandit is the kind of hard breach counter, the wall denial, that I guess doesn't get a lot of play these days. With Kaid and Mute so strong and so versatile, we tend to see Bandit, even though he does have such a good gun, slip through the cracks a little bit, and he only really surfaces when the Maverick is banned, and we're going to see a game of Bandit juggling. That's like the only reason you would pick Bandit over the other ones, right? And so I definitely think that's going to be a talking point for this round here. We saw Emo did a really good job juggling on the cash defense for Wildcard, and we'll see if Spirited can have a similar impact, as the Electric Claws are both going on these garage walls on that nice angle from rafters. Of course, EMP will deal with that. I think the strategy for 7th Heaven here is just to try and stretch Vinny's EMPs as thin as possible.
Absolutely, it's always a good thing to try and target right now, and Spirited is going to be tasked with the tough challenge of trying to bandit juggle this. Wildcard are just getting themselves set up, and as classic, they're going to use this EMP concussion combo. Now, Imorin couldn't quite get the concussions through, but it's only one juggle and bail, and he's going to be the Selmas opening up that wall for CC, so not working out for Spirit in this occasion.
That said, he does manage to take down one exothermic charge. I would rather get rid of a thermite charge than get rid of a Selma, just because of the potential there. I like that Pika here is just continually juggling, trying to hopefully catch someone off guard. Looks like Wildcard's actually going for bedroom control. This is not something we really saw emphasized by 7thHeaven at all. So it might signal here that Wildcard's actually going to go for a construction take instead of the garage takes we saw from 7thHeaven.
Definitely be the play right now. You're seeing a lot of Wildcard players start to rotate into that direction, so maybe they really are considering the plant to be in cash, because that is Milo carrying Diffuser, but Souffle, he is just hanging out down in the bar, and if this is not carefully managed by Wildcard with their flank drones or even just some proactive droning just around the hatch to make sure, this could be devastating for this attack.
It's not like he has a C4 to actually take down one of these players through the floor, but he does have that hatch open and he has impacts, which means that he's going to be in a pretty strong position to try and counter any player who gets a little bit too close to that cash wall. That said, the cash wall into construction was actually soft. So it's not like Pat's going to try and breach that with an exothermic. I'm also pretty sure we saw a drone downstairs in bar that might have actually spotted Souffle.
I don't think it did, because there's some boxes on the side. It's a very specific stair angle, and that's the thing about Wildcard right now, is they don't have a death on the board. So nobody dedicated to actually watching that. Now, Pat is keeping an eye on sight, and they're trying to manage this. This flank could definitely still be possible, and Cyan with a beautiful peek from Cash, just making it a little bit tougher for Wildcard, but they pounce.
Oh my god, they do indeed! And Souffle is the player on the flank. I sure hope someone from Wildcard was watching that drone, thankfully. Pat is watching the angle. As soon as he gets picked up, he straight away is on the ball on that one. A Wildcard, an explosive round win, nets them, get this, match point.
That was brutal. Just absolutely monstered 7thHeaven on site, and Wildcard are looking really good right now. And this is a good sign if you're a Wildcard fan, and I mean good sign if you're on Wildcard in general. They're looking quite coordinated, and this is definitely, I would say, the best Siege I've seen Wildcard play pretty much all year, to be completely honest with you. But I guess the biggest question mark moving forward will always be, can they keep this consistent? On top of that, it's not done yet. They've still got one round to close this out. 7thHeaven could definitely still bring this back. It is 4 rounds in a row. It's a big ask, but totally possible.
Something that I was talking to Rousey about, I think this was a couple weeks ago now, something that the coach of Wildcard's really been trying to encourage his players to do, especially Vinny and Geo, is to seize opportunities when they see them. Because, like, this is a stacked roster of fraggers, right? On the Wildcard side, Emo, Vinny, Geo, and Milo were all very much renowned as fraggers. You know, Pat not so much. But these guys are really good at just looking for opportunities. And if they see them, they should probably take them. That's exactly what happened in that round with Vinny. I went back and I watched the replay on my laptop. He actually jumped in the CCTV window and went straight into garage to take down that garage player.
That's hectic. And also that drone, I was so sure that Spirit had spotted that drone, but it didn't look like he did. And I mean, that could be a really big factor here in the difference of these attacks, is it looked like Wildcard's had some seriously good drone spots, and just generally their intel gathering has been on point from what we've seen so far. It's all indicating that they could really take this dub right now. Souffle tasked to bandit juggle on this wall. Spirited last time, didn't quite get it down. Pat is going to play the dance with Souffle. Who is going to come out top right here?
Let's find out. Oh, Pat's definitely going to get juggled there. I mean, you just need your Zofia. Oh, that said, I guess they did bait it out by having the Ace Selma there as well, and Cyan's going to lose his life trying to rotate back. Another strong opening pick for Vinny. Get this. Only 1 round so far of the 8 we have seen, well, 9 we have seen so far, has 7thHeaven found the opening pick. Wildcard have found the other 8.
So again, 7thHeaven going for a very daring little blank right here. No, they're just rotating back to site. But this is the thing, is they're giving so much control to Wildcard on the east side, and there's still so much time. I think this is going to be really deadly for 7thHeaven, and if Wildcard continue to keep things tight, they are in the driver's seat right here to potentially close this out at 7-2, provided they don't make any massive slip-ups.
I mean, we have seen some pretty crazy reverse sweeps so far in APAC South. I think it was the Chiefs Elevate, I think it was, where Chiefs were up 4 rounds. They got reverse swept 7 rounds in a row. So I definitely don't want to celebrate early here for Wildcard. 7thHeaven are a strong team, and they shouldn't be underestimated, especially when their back is against the wall. That said, Wildcard have made good progress this round on top of the fact that they have the opening pick. Breach is open on Jacuzzi, and they have control. Pika takes a bit of damage, doesn't have a C4, but he can now play downstairs. It looks like 7H is actually going to try and play a little bit of plant denial here, but Spirited has been taken down once again. Wildcard go for a monster into the site, but Souffle is ready to receive. Pat trades him down, and Pika is the last player for 7thHeaven to save not only the round, but the map. He can find the first pick in a 1v3, and now Wildcard have to rotate. They can take down a little bit of the info gathering, but if Pika wins this second fight, it's not going to happen. Wildcard, out of nowhere, they come back and they make a 7-2 look easy against 7thHeaven.
That's actually absolutely huge, because again, 7thHeaven have looked in pretty good form in the opening couple of weeks of APAC South, and to just be absolutely demolished like that is a really big move from Wildcard. And look at that, Pat and Milo top of the table, combining pretty solid, and given that both of those guys were playing hard breach in the attacks as well, look, really good job.
That's actually a massive credit to the support players there, at least on the attacking side. What a massive win there for Wildcard. You said it. When can we start to question, is this the moment where Wildcard have had a bit of consistency? Is this really a good sign of things to come? And honestly, I'm starting to think it is. Wildcard didn't win that because they had a couple of players that just popped off and might be a bit hot and cold when it comes to their next game. Wildcard looked like a well-oiled machine. Not the Wildcard of the past where everything was really rigid and static, but there was definitely some kind of semblance of that identity with the spice of the insane fraggers and playmakers that we see on this roster.
Yeah, for real. Just literally in the space of about 2 weeks, it feels like Wildcard have made some serious improvements. And from this point on, I think it's just a matter of, again, can they continue this to be consistent? The other question mark I still have, which I'm sure will probably get mentioned also on the desk, is they've only one clubhouse. So how deep is their map pool? Can they replicate this on other maps? Because if teams just start banning clubhouse from them, like, is that all it takes to be able to beat Wildcard at this current present time? Who knows? But at the end of the day, they've just put on a really solid show against 7thHeaven, and things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. And while they didn't get to play at the Sixth Invitational this year, I'm sure that they're going to be gunning for a spot at the Mexico Major should they be able to get into those top 4 positions come the end of the stage. Let's toss it back over to the desk, and the boys will break it down.
Well, I don't think we're ever going to hear the end of this from Guz. He's got a smirk from ear to ear on that prediction. I mean, did you really expect anything like that?
Ah, not to that extent. It was absolutely dominant. A 5-1 half to kick things off for Wildcard, and then they closed it out so quickly as well. And I said it even before the match. I was like, this is more of a heart pick than a brain pick. But I mean, at the end of the day, Wildcard pulled through. They played some really solid Siege, and this is what we wanted to see from them. It's starting to feel like they're starting to get a bit of a rhythm. And wow, 7th just got absolutely demolished. Simple as that.
Look, if you've got a big smile on your face, I can't imagine how big Vinny's is. Well, guess what? I don't have to imagine, because he's here with us now. Look at it! Look at it! We knew it was going to come. We knew it was coming. The good-looking bloke himself. Vinny, what a game. I mean, I'm just going to let you have the floor here. What just happened?
I mean, we've been working hard leading up to this point and leading up to this season, especially for South APAC, and I think we're just showing kind of the hard work that we're putting in at the moment.
Xenox.
Yeah, Vinny, listen, congratulations firstly on this win. It's a big one for you guys. Of course, you're getting all 3 points. Technically right now tied for first place in APAC South. A lot of us, of course, and we've had this discussion in some of our interviews, look at this stage as a bit of a rebuilding phase. But when you get wins like that, I think it must give you guys confidence that this, quote, rebuilding phase might not last that long if you can see sort of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, we are rebuilding, but we're not expecting this rebuild to be, kind of where we're getting destroyed every week. I think, we still have 5 players that definitely have the ability to, to play. So it's a rebuild, but the changes aren't big enough for us to warrant having another poor season, especially after last season. So, we're still gunning for that top spot this season.
Yeah, now one thing I wanted to sort of ask you about, and Raven, I guess, threw you guys under the bus a little bit at the end of the cast. You mentioned that Clubhouse is the only map you've won in APAC South. Is that a worrying sign maybe that your map pool depth isn't quite there, or are we reading into that a little bit too much?
No, like, we were talking about the rebuild, so, the map pool is still a work in progress. We're still trying to figure out which maps, are more suited to our team and the way that we play at the moment. But yeah, people should just be more scared of our clubhouse. I think that's what people should get out of it.
Look, I'll keep this as short and sweet as the game was, Vinny. Congratulations on the 3 points, and any final words before we let you go?
Just thank you to the fans. Another win from us, but we're hoping to stay undefeated this season after the first loss. So hopefully more to come.
Beautiful. Thanks for that, Vinny. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
I'm going to quote that until the day that I die. Undefeated, except for the first loss of the season. Sorry, Vinny, we had to just take the Vic a little bit there. But Xenox, this is some really good signs. Obviously, Guz has alluded to, the whole clubhouse thing. But is this enough to warrant us really piquing our interest?
I think you've got to keep it almost a bit cautious, right? It's a great result, and you definitely want to celebrate if you're a Wildcard fan. And as I said, I think you can see that light at the end of the tunnel there. And it's not a very long tunnel. And for Wildcard, that was a really solidified performance on the defense. Yes, it was on Clubhouse. Yes, as Raven liked to put a bit of a downer on it. He's just sad because he's 1-8. It's only map that they've won so far. But hey, after what was stage 1 and basically, almost this entire half of the year so far, you take anything you can get if you're Wildcard. And 7thHeaven's a team that has been playing pretty well. In saying that, maybe we overvalued 7thHeaven a little bit, everyone except for, I guess, the men in red Guz.
Yeah. I don't know. It's always really difficult to make assumptions on a team's projected future based off one match. We've seen it time and time again. In APAC South, a team can have one good week and then next week they just completely fail to show up. Now, of course, part of that is it's best of one format and consistency is really difficult, but it does give us a positive sign. I think for me personally, the next thing we need to see from Wildcard is they need to take down another team of similar or higher strength on a different map, because there is probably a real possibility that teams don't want to go to Clubhouse against Wildcard for the remainder of the regular season at least, and that's where we really need to see Wildcard step up.
Well, talking about stepping up, Guzzler, we are going to be moving on to our next matchup of the night. It's an absolute banger and it's up after the break. Of course, it is none other than Knights versus QC. We'll see you in a second.